Making a video. Make YouTube videos about law.
Well, I told you once and I told you twice.
Law. This one's about the Redlands bust. Law. The Rolling Stones were arrested in '67 and sent to prison. They were rather stitched up by an angry judge. And it's a very, very, very silly trial. Have a good walk, won't you? Welcome back. This is part 3. This will be the last time. Who ratted out the Rolling Stones? In part 1, we gathered all the suspects. In part 2, we examined the trial, looking for clues. In this concluding chapter, I will reveal for the very first time the identity of the rat think telltale who got Mick and Keith banged up for a crime that they did commit and did kind of get away with.
It's against the law, you know, and I think looking back on it, it seems rather a barbaric law.
Someone will have to pay the price.
So who done it? Who made that call to the news desk of the News of the World? Who was the snitch? The newspaper editor, the chauffeur, the hippie, the dealer with a briefcase full of drugs, the ambitious American music manager, the disgruntled pop star, the crooked cops, the bodyguard, or the entire British establishment? Tell me in the comments and then watch the rest of the show, and don't forget to tell me your top 3 Stones album. Get ready for the big reveal. Let's start it up. It's time to get some satisfaction. Here we go. The hangers-on, the chauffeur and the bodyguard didn't betray the Stones. The papers would pay for tip-offs, but you don't bite the hand that feeds you.
Oh no. Oh no.
And sure, Alan Klein wanted Andrew Oldham's clients, but the last thing he wanted was a drugs bust. The dealer at the party, the Acid King, lied about what happened years later. His briefcase was searched and it was empty. How do I know that? Because the kids at the party had done all the drugs. He fled. Oldham fled because they were scared, not because they were snitches.
Oh no.
The British establishment didn't really give a damn about a bunch of rock stars. Jagger and Richards were represented in court by actor Nigel Havers' dad, Michael Havers. He was the most expensive silk in the country. He ended up the Attorney General under Margaret Thatcher, and then the Lord Chancellor, and then a Baron in the House of Lords. He was the very embodiment of the British establishment. If the establishment did anything, it conspired to get Jagger and Richards off the charges. You don't get more establishment than Lord Rees-Mogg, editor of the Times. That editorial was only voicing public opinion. There was no conspiracy by the establishment.
Here's a chance to change your mind.
Ladies and gentlemen, I told you this was an Agatha Christie mystery. This is the twist. On Murder on the Orient Express, it was all of them. In the Redlands bust, it was none of them. The Redlands bust wasn't caused by a phone call to the News of the World. There never was a phone call. There was no informant, but there was a snitch. There was a no-good, down and dirty rat who conspired to arrest Mick and Keith. The News of the World dealt in lies, checkbook journalism. They interfered in criminal trials. They bribed cops for tip-offs. They did it for decades. They traded in gossip and scandal. The News of the World simply lied. That rag was eventually closed down for hacking the phones of celebrities. There was no phone call. The News of the World wanted to undermine Mick Jagger's libel case. That scurrilous newspaper had him followed. They knew he was at Redlands for a party. It didn't take a genius to work out that Redlands would be awash with narcotics. The police in this country are lazy and slow. They arrived a day late. Jagger and Richards were lucky to only have been caught with a very small amount of drugs. The News of the World tipped off the police. So who was the snitch? Who was the rat? That person was none other than The editor of the News of the World, Stafford Summerfield. The editor of the News of the World, Stafford Summerfield, the Fleet Street legend who invented checkbook journalism. He probably didn't make the call to the police himself, but the call was made with his full knowledge and his full approval. But the Stones were stoners. Over the next years and decades, they would all be arrested for drugs over and over. The arrests were inevitable. If not at Redlands, then soon. I've told you once, I've told you twice, this would not be the last time. Oh no, oh no. Did the Redlands bust matter? Not really. It didn't affect the history of the world. It didn't change English law. I know it's only rock and roll, but I like it. I like it. Yes, I do. But it had an undeniably massive effect on the history of the Rolling Stones. It created a bond between Mick and Keith, which led to the sacking of Andrew Oldham and Brian Jones. Redlands changed the band. In January '69, before the bust, they released a not very good pop album, Between the Buttons. In December '69, they released a not very good psychedelic album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request. It was recorded between the bust and the appeal, but after Redlands, after the appeal, they were a different group. They turned their backs on pop and started to find the voice, the swagger, the attitude that would make them the greatest rock and roll band in the world. They were free to do whatever they wanted to do. No fear. What followed Redlands was Beggar's Banquet, Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, Exile on Main Street. Redlands could have been the breaking of the Stones. Instead, it was the making of the Stones. They weren't broken on the wheel like a butterfly. They were the wheel, a steel wheel. Redlands wasn't even bad news for the Stones. Redlands won them new fans and credibility and solidified their image as the bad boys of rock. That master of PR, Alan Klein, spun the Redlands bust to cast the Stones as the most dangerous band in the world, as Keith Richards readily admits. I've been playing up to it ever since.
I saw some guy heading straight for Mick. I have no idea what this guy is going to do. I don't know if he's going to stab Mick, hug him, kiss him, roll over and screw him. I don't know. And I do have a weapon in my hand. That Telecaster's a real handy smack on me. And I just took it off and I saw that he was definitely going for Mick and nobody else was going to get in the way, so I just swung it. He fell into Charlie's drum kit, but didn't stop Charlie playing, you know. By then the guys had grabbed him, so I put the guitar back on. I was playing Satisfaction at the time. This is going to sound terrible, but the damn thing had stayed in tune.
Would you welcome, please, the